Greetings all. Welcome to High Strangeness in Alaska. Now, I am focusing on Bigfoot mostly on this series, the Bigfoot studies. However, I'm interested in all paranormal things, other cryptids, and especially UFOs. I've always been interested in UFOs, and believe it or not, Alaska is one of the major hotspots in UFOs, I feel. It's similar to New Mexico, and yet we have a rural population, a low population, wide spread out land, lots of area where there's no people at, and that seems to attract these UAPs, UFOs, and we have all kinds of crazy sightings. Now, I am almost done with the Saucers of the North book by Jessie Desmond. She's actually the one that hosts the UFO, the Bigfoot meetup in Fairbanks, Alaska, too, the Alaska Bigfoot Expo every 2 years. So I hope to make that in another year and a half. But this is just a great book. It goes through the history of UFOs in Alaska airspace. It goes through a lot of interesting stuff about military bases, just politics in Alaska and the HARP program. And then it just has cases, sightings, and it's so interesting. There's a bunch of sightings of orange kind of globe UFOs, cigar-shaped UFOs, triangle UFOs. And sometimes they come in like groups where a cluster 1 year during a month or two, all these orange UFOs were spotted. A lot of green, crazy green glowing UFOs. I've talked to people that served in the military up here and just heard some amazing stories where they were up, and this one guy I worked with, he's a nurse. He was up on a helicopter crew in the interior, and they just saw something in the distance. It wasn't one of theirs, and it was just a bright, piercing light. Just, obviously it was some kind of craft, but nothing that we have, because it was just this bright light out in the middle of nowhere, and they didn't know what it was. A lot of interesting stories. Personally, I've only had a couple sightings. One was in New Mexico, and it could have been some weird satellite, or actually it was in Durango, Colorado. The New Mexico one, me and my buddy saw, like, it could have been a rocket. It was like a rocket shaped thing just going across, and then it let out this big fiery blast and just kind of went across the sky. Absolutely could have been a rocket or missile. In Durango, Colorado, it was around 2002. I was in my backyard looking up at the night sky. And that's what's nice about the Southwest, especially if you kind of get out of the city. You just have this beautiful starscape. And I was looking at this really bright star, and then it just kind of started moving and changing directions way up in the atmosphere, and then kind of fizzled out. Another thing that happened up here in Alaska, this was in 1992. I was doing a road trip from Anchorage to Homer. Every time we were in a mountain pass, not in a city, and then we'd go through a city and come out, I would see these orange, reddish orange, small dots that were way up in the atmosphere, kind of flickering and just moving around real fast. And that's not a satellite, a whole bunch of them. And we have similar sightings to that. Unfortunately, it didn't come down. I saw some big giant craft. They were just way up in the atmosphere, moving around, unlike a satellite. Really interesting. And this book talks about things like that. Now we're going to interview my buddy Daryl. He's got a couple compelling stories, but the biggest story, besides the modern tic-tac stories that the UFO has come out with in the last 2 years, or the military and the government finally admitted, was the Japan Airlines story. What was it? It's the most amazing story I've ever heard. It was the Japan Airlines flight 1628 outside of Anchorage, 1986. And it was a cargo crew. They were bringing wine from France outside of Anchorage. They started seeing these weird UFOs, caught it on their radar, visual. The radar of the tower at the airport got it. Military radar got it. And they were asking if they wanted to scramble jets, but pilot was scared. The Japanese pilot, no, don't do that. And then they just got a crazy sighting where a mothership came right up in front of them. It looked like a giant glowing tortoise shell. and some of the UFOs that were toying with them came up and into that. I mean, it let off this light and kind of sunburned their face. I mean, I didn't realize that they had so many. Not only are they trained pilots with these visual descriptions, and you know, this mothership was the size of an aircraft carrier. I have talked to a couple other people that have seen giant motherships too, but they had all these radar signatures, and it's just, when you got more than one data point like that, you know, triangulating on the UFO, it's amazing. So I'm going to do some more series on UFOs, but let's interview my buddy Daryl on a couple of these stories. All right. Well, I'm here with my buddy Daryl, also known as Suanic. Is that correct pronunciation?
Suanic.
Suanic. Okay. And is that a Lutic?
It is a Nupiat.
Okay.
I received it during when we went to First Alaskans.
Okay.
They were asking, you know, us who didn't have native names, and so
Awesome.
Flossie is the one that eventually gave it to me.
Very cool. All right, so I'm very interested in a couple of your UFO sightings. The first one was recent. That was this April. Why don't you tell me what you saw, and then we'll all put the footage and photos.
Right. Well, I came out here to get something to drink. You know, woke up, come out here to get something to drink, and I didn't even notice. At first, looking out the window here, above the trees, there was like a purple light hanging out there, and didn't think anything of it until I got to my bedroom and looked out of that window, and it was just very intriguing. It's like, wait, why is there just a purple light hanging out in front of the window there, or out beyond the trees?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, then it just sort of hit me while I was looking at it. It's like, what, shouldn't I take a picture of it or a video clip of it?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I was just memorized for about a good 5 minutes, watching it before I got my camera out. And unfortunately, it's like everything else that you get with your shaky cam. I had a cat that wanted attention while I was looking out the window. I bumped my hand and shake it out, but you know, it was just out there. It was blue, purple. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's like this.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It was too low to be a satellite, and yet it was not an airplane because it was stationary.
Right. Yeah, that's right, Lily. It wasn't stationary. And
if you had to estimate how far out it was, what would you say?
I would say it would have to be beyond the clouds.
Okay.
Further out. You know, I can see that when the planes go by, if I can provide you footage, or if you're able to catch one, you can see them just zooming by here.
And they're loud.
And when they're coming into land over at Merrill's Field, and you know, it's fast and loud. You know, you can pretty much see it.
Right.
And but it was just hanging out there and just blinking. You know, you'll see it pulsating, and at one point you can see the lights reflecting off the window and the camera lens.
Right.
And once I was able to take a good bead on it, you can see it just slowly starts gravitating towards one batch of the tree, then head over to the second batch of trees and disappear behind the trees. And when you able to take some pictures, you can see that, you know, where it disappeared at. It's really hard to say that it was a plane or jet or a helicopter.
Right.
I'd like to believe what I saw was a UFO, and AP, I think is the new name for it.
UAP, yeah.
UAP, and you know, and for that moment, you know, it was great to actually believe.
Absolutely.
You know, and it was just really awesome to have that feeling.
Yeah.
And have that moment.
Absolutely.
to see it happen, and it happened so quickly.
So what I'm really interested in is this sighting you had years ago. Tell me the approximate date and what happened on that sighting.
Okay, that was back in 2006 or 7 in November.
Okay.
And that sighting, this was out in Muldoon area.
Okay.
And I was sitting there watching some television and just noticed a bright light hover down and stop. And I don't know why it didn't register at first. It's like, that's sort of odd. Then it just stayed there. It was a white light, shape of like your typical saucer. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty bright. And it just took a few moments to register. Oh my God, that's a UFO.
Right.
And I ran downstairs. My parents were there and said, "Mom, Dad, check it out. There's a UFO in front of the house." Mm-hmm. And we walked out there and stared at it. It felt like it was like the next cul-de-sac over, just hovering.
So close.
Yeah, so close, next to the next cul-de-sac over. I tried to approach it and get further. Sorry about that. Okay. It's really funny how that works. Where
right.
Nobody calls or texts me all day. Then the moment I'm doing something,
right, never fails.
But yeah, so I started to venture out towards it outside the door while my parents and I were looking at it, and Mom kept saying, "Get back in here."
So you went outside onto the deck?
Yeah, it was a driveway. Mm-hmm. And start walking out towards it, just it felt it was close enough to the ground where you could touch it. Obviously, mm-hmm. You couldn't, but it just felt that it was that close.
Right.
And of course, you said, "Get your back in here. Don't go towards it."
Right.
So we went back in, and it was cold, and just stared at it through the kitchen window. Mm-hmm. A few moments later, it started changing, different colors.
Okay.
It started off with it turned white, then it had like that yellow, then it turned red, and pretty soon it just kept rotating its colors that way, and it moved over to where the elderly place and the power station is at. Mm-hmm. And it stopped there, and that's when it really started to cycle through its colors.
Okay.
And pretty soon you can start seeing, it looked to me like little lightning bolts coming down from underneath it.
Wow.
Brr, brr, brr. And at that point it turned to a solid red color. Mm-hmm. And it just looked like it just vibrated out of existence at that point. And disappeared.
Wow. And so was it like the size of a full moon on a large full moon day? The size of a penny? What size would you say it was, like, to your eye?
To my eye, it probably would look like the size of a full moon. Okay. But it seemed really close.
Sure.
Really close. You just feel like you can just reach out and touch it.
Right. So would you estimate its size to be like the size of a car?
I'd probably say size of a cul-de-sac.
Big.
Really big.
Wow.
Okay.
And how many people saw it? You and both your parents?
Both, yeah, and a couple of the neighbors.
Wow. And the neighbors said they saw it too.
Right.
Amazing.
Right. Yeah. So that was one of those lifetime experiences.
Yeah.
And a week later, there was a person trying to hoax us. Mm-hmm. And you can tell it was a hoax.
Right.
You could hear the sound of the drone, mm-hmm. and hear the sparklers, coming off of it. Although at first, you didn't hear it. So, oh my gosh, there's another one.
Yeah.
And that was making sounds. You can hear the sound of the drone and hear the sparklers.
But the other one was big with
No sound at all.
Wow.
No sound. Even when it was doing its changing of the colors and shocking either the power station or the elderly state home out there.
Right.
And it was a great experience. I just feel really fortunate, to have.
Yeah.
I want to believe.
Absolutely.
A couple of UFO experiences.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to get a artist rendition based on your descriptions and see what we come up with.
All right, sounds great.
Yeah. What are some of the interesting UFO Alaska stories you've heard? What kind of sightings are people having?
Well, I know that airline pilots see them.
Okay.
I had a sighting myself with my girlfriend at the time.
Wow.
A pretty good one too, actually. I don't know if you want me to get into that or not, but it was pretty interesting. I know it was in the middle of, I think it was June.
Okay.
Beginning of June. Beautiful day. We're on the Glen Highway, right at the Eagle River where the garbage dump is. You used to be able to park your car and walk on the bike trail.
Okay.
So we were walking on this bike trail a few days. We started walking. It's a great little trail. We put our earbuds in and just kind of zone off to music, and we both just walk. This particular day, it was beautiful. Airplanes were flying around, jets, everything, eagles, seagulls are flying around. Nothing abnormal.
Right.
About 4:30 in the afternoon, traffic driving by in the Glen.
Daylight, too.
Daylight, nothing big, just walking along. And I noticed kind of on my peripheral vision, it's like, at first I want to call them lures, like flashing lures.
Okay.
And that got my attention. I looked over, and then I'm like, seagulls. I'm thinking, seagulls? No, that's not what I'm seeing. And I kind of had to position myself a look, because I'm looking up, the guardrail's kind of right there. And what I started seeing were they were so far out there and so small, you almost had to look away to see them. But there was a cluster of them.
Okay.
And each one was blinking. And each one would stop blinking, like they wouldn't do it together. They're just kind of blinking. And each individual one would stop blinking, and then it would like disappear and then show up right here and start blinking again.
Wow.
So it was like a cluster, almost a circle. And I swear, we both swear that there was this one right in the middle of this cluster. And it was blinking too. It was kind of blinking, doing this thing. But it wouldn't move. Like the other ones, all the ones around this, they blink and then do it. And they're all doing this. They're all kind of... We sat there, I'm not kidding, for a good 15 minutes watching this. Other bicyclists are kind of looking at us. But we're openly going, what? Okay, what is that? Is it paper?
Was there a body to it, and then the light, or just the light?
Yeah, so after about 10 minutes of watching this, I finally realized I don't think the flashing thing, I don't think they're flashing. I think they're spinning. Wow. And it's the sunlight, because the sun was this way, which would be shining right on them. I think it was the sun reflecting off them.
Wow.
But they did appear to they'd flash thing, and then it's like they'd disappear, just like gone, and they'd be like just a little bit over, and they'd start doing it again.
Wow.
So they all started, and they're all doing this, so we're watching this to a point where our necks are sore. And we're like, what do you think they are? And then all of the majority of the cluster starts just dissipating, just kind of fading out.
Wow.
The middle one stayed, and then the middle one started moving.
Wow.
To the right, and that's when I whipped out my iPhone and I got video of this thing flying through the cloud. One of the other ones of the cluster started flying to the left, and this one's going to the right, and we're both looking at both of them. And then the one flying to the left, all of a sudden, just kind of stopped and started going this way, accelerating.
Wow.
Almost as if it was trying to catch up to this one, and then they both just kind of dissipated.
Wow.
And that whole thing was 25 minutes long.
Okay.
And, I'm not out, we weren't out looking for UFOs. We just saw it.
Yeah.
And I was working for the FAA at the time, so I was a forensic animator. So I was ready. This was fresh in my head. So the next day, I didn't have my camera with me. I had my phone, but I went and got my nice Canon camera. And I went to the same spot and I took a picture of the same mount, the same, and it was almost identical day. I just didn't have that cloud right there that was there. And I did a little animation of it.
Nice.
The day after, just because it was so fresh in my head.
Right.
So that's on my YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll put a link to it.
But I also included, you can see the video, and you'll see it. It's just like a little light, like an orb looking. It's really small, but you can see it. You can see it. And like I said, we weren't out looking for them. We were just walking along. My girlfriend at the time, I wish she was here. She would agree. I mean, but it was bizarre. It was bizarre. So that's my experience. I've heard other people in this state have seen everything from orbs to balls of light, things in the woods, lights in the woods.
Yeah.
Not a lot. I'm not really. I haven't heard a lot of it, but I've heard it. So
Interesting.
yeah, but the UFOs are, supposedly they're everywhere. So
Right.
I don't know.
So there you have it, folks. I do believe that Alaska is a hot spot for UFOs. I think it's very interesting. There are some stories of back engineering alien technology, government involvement. I don't know about that. It may be possible, but I do think that these ships that are in our airspace are not human, are extraterrestrial. I believe that. A lot of people don't, but it has to be the only answer for the abilities they have. So let me know what you think. Chime in the comments, and I will keep these paranormal investigations going. I'll see you next week.